Hey guys, it's the Banana Crew. Welcome to our podcast, and today we're discussing what the hell is wrong with horror games.
Indeed, there's a lot of things wrong with horror games, so we thought this would be an easy subject to talk about.
We're your hosts, the Banana Crew. You've got Wigwam,
Ditto motherfucking Jones,
Kelly?
and we game and podcast and sketch.
I was gonna say, we do a couple of things, right? You know,
Yep.
I mean, if
All
we
sorts
just
of
did
stuff.
games, it'd be kind of boring.
That would be. First of all, I think the biggest problem with horror games is that most of them aren't really that scary.
It's really hard for them to be scary. There might be a couple that I can think of that are scary.
I could probably name the games that I actually found scary on one finger, and it's pretty much just PT. A lot of them are just jump scares. It's just a de-evolution of tons and tons of jump scares.
I feel like PT has a lot more suspense, though. I mean, you're
Right.
doing nothing but going through that hallway. You do it 3 or 4 times, and it's like...
That's horror. Like, that's putting you on the edge of your seat. It builds up this suspense, this creepy feeling of, like, I don't know. You hear the footsteps behind you. It gets in your head, and it makes you actually scared because you don't know what's happening. It's playing with your senses and your mind. Five Nights at Freddy's, while was fun for us, was nothing but monsters just jumping out. It was like the equivalent of playing, like, Don't Wake Daddy the board game in horror game form.
That one at least had the sense of, alright, they're coming for me. Like, you always
Right.
had to be like, alright, where are they? Where are they? Where are they?
The build-up in Five Nights at Freddy is the best horror part of Five Nights at Freddy's. When you very first sit down, if you play the game, if you didn't know anything about it, you would see, like, holy shit, where'd the one thing go? Where the fuck is the one mannequin? Where'd it go? What the fuck is happening?
Then searching frantically, and then next thing you know, there's no fox!
Yep, and there's and then there's a second one gone, and a third one gone.
The first one is, I feel, definitely better than the second. And it really was fun playing it. I mean, we were all there for it. God, I can't stand those jump scares. I had a hard time with that one.
You had
I
a
could
really hard time with that one.
You have a hell of a time just being in the room when we're playing a horror game.
Now that I think about it, that game was actually the one where I may have done the best. Because they were always jump scares.
It was real quick.
I knew what I was supposed to be afraid of, whereas in like Slender and Outlast, there's so much anticipation, and you don't know when it's gonna happen. So
Like
I freaked
Slender
out at
fucking
everything.
teleporting in front of you. The
Slender
son
was
of a
great.
bitch.
Slender had some atmosphere. And
That was so lame.
Yeah, Slender gameplay-wise is pretty lame.
Especially the part in that house where you had to close all the doors and windows. That was mostly because the controls were ass. That was so bad,
Oh,
but
yeah.
it's still
The bad
added
controls
to it.
just ripped us right out of the game, too, though, because we were like, oh, man, Slender! Oh, god damn it, door!
If we had gotten the controls right and they would have actually worked, the gameplay would have been very different. It was terrifying in the beginning, but like if you can't close a fucking window and Slender's behind you, like it ruins the whole thing.
Biggest struggle was not running away from Slender. It's working the damn simple mechanics of everyday life.
Whereas in Outlast, like every time you have to close a door, you don't just close it, you slam it. It's
Oh,
like,
yeah.
that's not
Let
noticeable.
me be real sneaky.
Stupid bastard.
Bang! Every single fucking time.
That's the only thing that made half of those levels hard when they were searching for you. You just slam everything you came in contact with.
Including
Outlast-
the locker that you're supposed to hide in.
Outlast starts off as a game with a cool horror element. You see, like, the enemies running into it, and within the first 10 minutes, that is basically done. You will figure out that all you have to do in that game is run as fast as you can, and it just becomes a parkour simulator full time.
Yeah, well, once we had Walro just blaze through it and chase everyone, then it's like, okay, the game is over now.
When you realize you can actually chase down the enemies even though you don't have a gun, like, and they won't do anything. The enemies in that game are too weak. The biggest, strongest enemy in that game takes 2 hits to kill you, and you get like 5 seconds of invulnerability after he hits you.
And that's another problem with horror games, what you just said. Guns. When you add that to horror game, it just becomes an action game.
They're the only true horror games are survival horror games.
I know, I get what they're trying to do with the weapons. It's like, I mean, you gotta add some kind of fun to it, something to mix it up, but then that just becomes all of it, like Left 4 Dead. I mean, those aren't really horror games, but that kind of thing where you've got zombies or whatever to kill with guns, then it's just a shooter action game.
The beginning of your horror game will be scary when you're just first getting your couple of guns, your shitty weak guns and whatnot. And then as you start to get better weapons, the game just becomes another action movie game.
Have you ever played Among the Sleep?
No, but I do know what it is.
It's not technically a horror game. It's like, it's really, really creepy, and you're playing from the perspective of like a toddler. There's a teddy bear that talks, and he like guides you through the actions of the game, but since you're playing as someone who's so small, it makes everything immediately way creepier.
You seem very, very helpless and
Yeah.
vulnerable. I thought in that entire game, because I watched people Let's Play it, that damn teddy bear was gonna be evil.
I
Like,
thought
for
so
sure it was gonna be
too.
like the devil incarnate in your teddy bear or something.
As soon as I found out that he wasn't the real villain of the game, I was like, okay, that took a turn.
I was like, this might as well be Ted at this point. The part of it that's decent is it puts you in that position where you feel vulnerable and there is scary shit happening. And that's something that's good in a horror game. Like, a horror game, you need to feel like there's some sort of danger and you can't really do anything except run.
It's
it
like-
has to activate the flight response as opposed to the fight response.
It's like being in the dark where you can't see. You're scared of it because you don't know what it is, and you can't
Right.
fight it because you don't know what it is, so you have to run away from it.
Also, playing as a toddler means you have limited mobility. It takes forever for them to climb from the floor up to a chair and up to a counter because they're fucking babies, and like you can walk, meaning like you can waddle / stumble, or you can crawl. You can't run. So it's like, no, you are a child. You have limited access to this.
Speeds are slow and
Yeah.
slower.
Which, that kind of gets me annoyed, so I don't know if I'd be okay with that one.
I guess it takes more patience.
Yeah, that's not what I have in a video game.
Oh no, not really. Slender and Amnesia both do this really well, where they don't let you see the monster. If you're looking at the monster, that's you fucking up. So it makes it even scarier. Every time you see the monster, it's making you, like, actively, alright, I have to run.
Like panic.
Yeah. It just, you see the monster and you panic because you know you're already fucking up, and your only chance is to just get as far the fuck away as possible.
I think what I like about Amnesia, though, is that the monsters make noise. Once they're near you, they growl. As in Outlast, the only reason you knew that maybe someone was after you
Because you're getting punched in the face.
was the music. So when the music came on, you were like, okay, someone's around. But sometimes music never turned on. They were just right behind you and you were dead. And I like Amnesia that because the monsters are like, rah, and they give you a warning, like, get the fuck out.
It definitely gives you that chance to run away because you know you can't do anything else. You don't have any guns or weapons. That's really what's done Resident Evil in. Resident Evil was a really interesting concept to make a game specifically that had clunky controls to make the player feel helpless. And then that has slowly devolved over the course of 5 or 6 games into just the biggest, buffest action Hollywood movie in game form that could possibly exist. Like, I'm surprised, like, Chris Redfield is not just running through hordes of zombies, punching them in the face at this point. Like, grabbing bosses and putting them in headlocks.
That might be next.
Dude, if he gets any fucking buffer, he is gonna have problems putting his arms down.
Just gonna waddle around with like a pistol on each end.
Yep, and then, like, every zombie he touches will just explode. Resident Evil 7, I just wrote, like, half the game right there. Wesker's the villain, boom, there's the second half of the game.
Somebody's gonna hear this and be like, shit, what do we do now?
Oh, man.
He just ruined our
We
plan.
have to scrap everything and start over.
It's like a new Soul Calibur game. What do we do? I don't know.
The same thing.
More tits and fighting, I guess? Alright, I like it.
Soul Calibur's greatest achievement. What if we just gave the player the ability to customize their own character, put as many tits as they want on the characters? It's genius.
You're hired.
Give the players right what they want. Yeah, I saw Mark LaPlayer recently play a game that was a dynamically generated level horror game. So it was supposed to be different every single time you played. You would always find different rooms and different things.
It's always neat.
Yeah, it's a really interesting concept, but I think it'd be quite hard to pull off for a horror game. Even PT is, like, heavily scripted, isn't it? When you're walking around from hallway to hallway, you're pretty much always going to arrive at the same specific parts, which makes it easier because you're leading characters and you're slowly building up the horror elements.
It would end up being the same thing, like if you had even if you had a random kind of setting.
It's always going to start off slow and then build up.
Yeah, it would, like, unless you had just a huge
You'd
variety of like monsters and how to deal with them, it would end up being the same thing.
I would need, like, a dynamically generated, like, city or a couple of houses or something more than just the game that it is, which is a cool concept, but it's just you walking in hallways and rooms and shit, similar to the PT. For that to really work, I think you would need a bigger area.
Probably something to add variety other than just hey, this isn't the same as it was before.
So the Typing Dead, that's a scary game, right? Because a literal C is the real terror.
You still have the opportunity to cut that out if you want
I'm
to.
never gonna cut that out. There's no way in hell.
Okay.
I think it's interesting that the horror games I'm seeing that are the best lately have all been indie games. I can't think of any AAA. I get why PT is a AAA in horror game, but for every PT you have your Five Nights at Freddy's, your Slender, your Outlast. Outlast is right on the cusp of being indie and not.
I kind of feel like they stopped. I mean, I haven't really paid attention to games coming out recently, but I mean, obviously last year there was basically nothing, but I feel like since they realized that horror games are kind of hard without adding weapons or just really doing something completely different, that it's kind of hard to make a good horror game.
Yeah, you had to really come up with something new. That's why I think I appreciated Five Nights at Freddy's so much, was even though it was jump scares, which usually I hate, it was presented in a new way, in a new style of gameplay that I wasn't really used to. Especially for that style of game. I like it too when I'm stumbling around, I'm collecting, I'm finding little trinkets to, help me survive a little bit. Like in Amnesia, you get, okay, I can light my lantern again, and I can do these kind of things. But when I'm just going around collecting ammo and bullets and running into the same comical guy from Resident Evil 4, the shop guy, come on. What are you buying? There comes a point where how am I supposed to take that seriously? How do I not get pulled out of the horror atmosphere every time I see that? And guys with, bags on their heads and chainsaws, that's just comical. That looks like some kind of stupid shit I would see at a haunted house.
I have seen that at a haunted house.
Haunted houses are also not scary. Why are haunted houses scary? You pay money, you know nothing bad's gonna happen. It's all jump scares. Jump scares aren't scary to me. That's why I like the movie The Shining, because it builds up the atmosphere of horror.
I will say, Louisville's a really great city for Halloween haunted attractions.
Yeah, I liked some of the fear walks.
I'm a little biased.
Around.
There are some good ones here.
What's a fear walk? I don't really know.
Oh, fear walk? Let's see, what's the one that I'm thinking of? Field of Screams?
Field of Screams?
Field of Screams, yeah. It's a giant cornfield, and I mean, you got obviously path going through it, and you get to a certain area, and there might be, for one, there was a bus, and it was filled with smoke, and then flashing strobe. And Freddy Krueger was in the bus.
They pay for licensing for this shit?
Yeah, it wasn't obviously Freddy Krueger. It was just a Freddy Krueger lookalike, and he was scraping the top, and he'd spark the top, and you're just like, oh man, this is wonderful, and you had to pass right next to him while he's scraping the top, and even though you know he's not going to get next to you, the fact that it's flashing in smoke and his hand goes like that right in front of your face, that was still pretty terrifying. And then there were some just a lot like that. And then there's this one guy in an ice cream truck who's just talking about sexual innuendos with his dick and ice cream for 5 minutes. We kind of sat in there and talked to him for a while.
That sounds horrifying.
That was terrifying.
That's
horrifying in real life.
That's called give your creeper brother a job.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. Go down to the corn maze where you can't bother anybody and earn some money.
I did Asylum Haunted Scream Park last year, and I really enjoyed it. Especially, there was one called Exterminate, and they gave you airsoft guns. And so you were just shooting air bubbles or whatever, but you had to shoot. They were like zombie aliens, but you're going through. It's like a laser tag. It's really dark. There are strobe lights, and then people just start screaming and running after you, and you have to shoot them. And they're like actors, so they'll do this whole dramatic death. But there are some rooms that just have a shit ton of them, and it's really fun and it's really scary because you think the guns actually work for a little bit. They act pretty convincingly, and I had a lot of fun.
Airsoft guns are cheap unless you spend a shit ton of money on them. They just
made
don't
me want to
work.
go play laser tag at least. You've not made me want to go to any haunted houses though.
Haunted Hotel is supposed to be really, really good.
Do you guys ever go to any of the ghost attractions in this town?
Oh,
Waverly?
I went to Waverly last year, yeah.
Waverly, I've heard some good stories about Waverly. I've heard two stories. One was from the tour guide there. The first thing that she saw was they go to a part where they walk outside and around it just to see the place. She said there was no one supposed to be in this area at all. No one was allowed. She looked over and it was a part where there's cars passing, and there was a person in a Civil War uniform in a window. The car another passes and he's gone. That's the one thing she saw. My brother-in-law and his brother were on the top floor for a different time, and none of the doors are supposed to lock in Waverly. They do not lock. They cannot. They got to the top floor, looked around, and the door would not open for 3 minutes. And then just one final push, and it opened. There was nobody around. So that's the only thing that they've heard. It's kind of difficult to say what's a walking sound when there's 1,000 people running around trying to find stuff.
Yeah.
But if it was just you and 4 other people, that shit would be terrifying.
Also, every time you go through, the tour guide always says, "Oh, it's been really active tonight, so let's go in."
Yeah, they always say that.
I had a lot of fun. I volunteered to walk down one of the hallways by myself to see if the spirits attached or whatever. And I'm really glad I did that because that was conquering a fear of mine, and I thought it was really cool and exhilarating, and I was like, this is fucking terrifying. I'm gonna die.
Yeah, I'd be pretty scared doing it.
But there was a guy in our tour group that decided to get wasted before the tour.
Aw, so now that sounds like an enjoyable haunted house tour.
I was in the same car as him, and he had like liquor in a water bottle that he was drinking on our way there. He was trying to be as inconspicuous as possible, and he was, as long as he didn't open his mouth to speak. As soon as he started talking, it was a dead giveaway, and we were just like, oh my god. At first we were like, dude, don't fucking ruin this for us. Like, all the gays magically got together once in a blue moon to go to this haunted house. We're gonna have a good time. And we didn't want him to fuck it up. So we go in, he's acting relatively normal, and then he starts crying.
Crying?
What?
We were in front of an elevator shaft, and this woman told this really long story about a homeless guy who had a dog who lived in there when it was abandoned. And the dog never left the human side, I guess. And other people would come in and tear stuff around and stuff. And then one day the homeless guy was gone and the dog was missing. And the guy and his dog had been killed and thrown down the elevator shaft. The point of the story is he got so upset about the dog getting hurt in the story that he cried. And he told the tour guide like a 5-minute story about how he was really emotionally attached to one of his dogs. In the middle of our tour.
Oh, man.
And slurring his words?
Yeah, and he cried again when we volunteered to walk down the hall, because there were two groups. I was on one side, he was on the other. While I was watching and not walking, I just hear someone sobbing from behind me. It kind of made the trip. It was really funny. And I had a lot of fun. And nothing bad happened-ish, except one girl got quote-unquote attacked by a ghost.
Bum, bum, bum. Probably was not.
Like,
Just a little asterisk right there.
what I'm thinking is she probably scratched her leg on like a wall or something, but she claims to have been standing in the center of one of the rooms, and she feels like a sting on her leg, and she looked down and she's got like these scratches that just go up like this. And the tour guide was like, okay, well, it looks like you've been targeted, so you should stay by me for the rest of the trip or something.
She's really dedicated to making everybody feel uncomfortable by scratching her own legs like that.
And then she like brought her to the
She was
front and
a
was
plant.
like, she used
They
her as like
planted
an
her in the
example.
fucking audience.
She
Give
used
an
her as
extra
an
$20
example.
to cut your legs up.
She was like, see, this is what can happen sometimes. Sometimes you can get attacked. It's not anything that's really going to hurt you, but you should be careful, blah, blah, blah. It was like a nature demonstration. I liked it.
She was an employee.
The all-night tours are probably... I've kind of wanted to do it, but it's probably super creepy only because you are alone in a dark hospital that's confusing and you get lost.
Yeah, that's what I wouldn't like about that the most, haunted or not.
I just don't want to be lost.
Yeah.
That's hella creepy.
That's just annoying.
Lost in a dark place I've never been before, that's just, nah.
There's like so many stories they tell you too about ghosts that they've seen that are attributed to certain places. The 5th floor is all haunted kids. The 4th floor is guys. 3rd floor is girls. 1st floor is like administration, and the meat locker.
I mean,
not?
of course, the meat locker is going to be haunted.
Like the morgue is on the 1st
Haunted
floor.
butcher.
Every floor is equally, if not more, scary.
So, video games, for the most part, not really that scary. At their worst, usually just poorly controlled.
Despite
Haunted
what you've
houses,
seen
little
in our
split on it.
videos.
But what about movies? What about the fucking Saw movies? Those movies are comical gore porn at this point.
Those are just like, I like horror movies. I don't like gore movies. So, like last year, I got really big into watching like Halloween and The Exorcist, and I love the
Nightmare
Poltergeist.
Before Christmas.
Poltergeist is amazing. I recommend Poltergeist. Everybody should watch it. It's
Poltergeist is a great movie. Poltergeist is a scary movie. Maybe it's just because I saw it as a kid and I really didn't want to get sucked into the TV. I think one of the scariest things I ever saw, and a lot of it probably had to do with being a kid, was the Twilight Zone episode where the girl falls through her bed into another dimension and then almost gets trapped, and they're going through the house trying to find the portal to the other dimension to save her and her dog.
Really
and they
tough.
just hear her crying through the walls is the thing. So like they're just walking around the house and they hear their daughter just crying through the walls for help, and they can't figure out how to get to her. That was creepy as all hell. And when the little aliens land down in another episode of The Twilight Zone and start fucking with the farmer's wife, that one was also really creepy to me for some reason. But that's mostly because I don't like puppets. Puppets are creepy as shit.
Oh my gosh.
Well, there are no good horror games about puppets, because that would scare me. Like, Five Nights at Freddy's was the closest thing with the animatronic.
Very true.
If you just had, like, straight puppets, I'd be terrified.
How do you make a horror game about puppets, though, if you know that they're connected by, like, someone's hand?
Well,
Like, if you pan
like
down a little...
Chucky.
Yeah.
Oh, I get... Oh,
Like
okay.
dolls and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that would actually be really creepy, but
You could
Ugh.
play, like, Among the Sleep from the baby's perspective versus dolls.
That would be... Oh my god, that would be the worst survival game.
Maybe the problem is not that horror games can't be scary, it's that we're not developing horror games. And clearly we have a better grasp on this than
obviously,
the game developers are out there currently.
we're better than they are.
So, keys to a successful horror game that I think we've come up with. You can't have any weapons.
Vulnerability.
Yeah, you gotta be vulnerable as all possible. Feel lost and disoriented. You can't be looking at the monster. You can't be able to kill the monster.
I think looking at it's fine, but not for like long. You have to like,
Right.
okay, there it is,
Seeing it
and
from
then
a distance,
get away from it.
Seeing it on cameras is good.
Why cameras?
I don't know, because it's not in the room with you. You know it's like chasing you. You know
Oh,
it's
you mean
out
like
there.
those kind of cam? I'm thinking
Oh,
like the
not
camcorder.
like goddamn
like the fucking camcorder.
Every
that's in
fucking
every...
horror. Why is it almost a necessary option for all horror games to make you play through the view perspective of a guy with a camera? Why do I need that stupid safety blanket?
I got a game. It fits all the criteria that you guys just said.
Okay.
Okay. The game is you're a drunk guy wandering around the city and you're being pursued by the city cops.
What did I do?
It feels like a little too close to home.
But think about it. You have limited mobility because you are disoriented and you're stumbling.
It's hard to move.
You
You're
can hitch a ride
damaged.
with somebody and that's like a bonus, like you get to move further, but like a cop's behind you. If you see the cops, you're already fucked, but you know they're coming. And you have to stay away from them. That's the game. That's called life.
The new game of life.
Oh my
By Ditto
gosh.
Motherfucking Jones.
Or-
You should get a patent.
Do one where they smoke. I don't know. You'd have to really up the paranoia in that one. There'd be like a
Giant
bunch of
acid
sense
trip.
I know
memory
you just
stuff.
reinvented the game Narc.
Like you
Let's just keep escalating. You're on PCP now.
make one for every
No,
drug.
you're the only person in the city not on PCP.
Oh god!
And everybody else has no skin. What? That's my horror game. It's an open city game. You start like dead
Someone-
metal in New York. Everybody's on PCP, and you have to get off of. Okay, you have to get off of Manhattan Island or Long Island or whatever in New York. Everybody's on PCP, and then the big finale is you going through the bridge or going through the tunnel to
Oh,
get back to
man.
mainland.
That's called Dark Knight Rises.
I was gonna say that's I Am Legend. I mean, that's okay. I kind of liked I Am Legend. I guess I invented I Am Legend again, but that's fine.
I was gonna say, that sounds very familiar.
It was okay the first time they invented it. Invent it again.
Alright. That sounds like a podcast.
Yeah, I think we properly ripped horror games a new one.
Have
Well,
fun
Take
editing
that
this.
for a
This
game.
has been Wigwam,
Ditto motherfucking Jones.
LA?
and join us next time for What the Hell's Wrong With, a future subject that we'll pick at a later date. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more. Follow us on Twitter if you're interested, and check out our Drunken Horror Nights if you want to see us be hypocrites and get scared shitless by every horror game we come into contact with.
We
Thanks
were
for
acting.
watching.
We were acting.
Yeah,
I
we're
promise.
acting
Scared. With a dramatic pause.
Well, that's gonna be it for this time. Banana Crew out.